She's a 400-year-old vampire. She's got the power, the beauty, and the ego to match. And she just enrolled in a human high school expecting everyone to bow at her feet. Instead, nobody will even talk to her. So she does what any self-respecting queen of the night would do. She bites the most popular girl in school and turns her into a loyal servant. There's just one problem. Her new servant is so obsessively devoted, so shamelessly in love, that the great vampire queen can't handle it. This is the story of a predator who became the prey. Her name is Ruruna. She's a vampire, 400 years old, draped in elegance and armed with centuries of superiority. She's weak to sunlight, garlic, and crosses, sure. But beyond those minor inconveniences, she considers herself vastly above every human walking the earth. So naturally, someone as great as her decided to enroll in a human school, because apparently even immortal creatures of the night need a change of scenery. And that decision? Absolute disaster. Ruruna sits alone at her desk, radiating an aura so intimidating that not a single student dares approach her. She has no one to talk to, let alone anyone willing to serve her. She's always alone, and the reason is painfully simple. Everyone is terrified of her, and she's oddly proud of that fact. When Wakana points out that this seems unreasonable, Ruruna fires back without a shred of self-awareness, insisting the fear is well-deserved. Enter Aihara Wakana, the blonde, bubbly daughter of the school's board chairman. This girl has been waited on hand and foot her entire life, surrounded by admirers and attendants who cater to her every whim. She strolls into the classroom like she owns the place, because in a way, she kind of does. Ruruna watches from her lonely desk, seething with jealousy, convinced that she's the one who deserves that kind of treatment. That jealousy is what pushes Ruruna over the edge. She decides that Wakana, this pampered, popular princess, is the perfect target. Ruruna has lived 4 centuries without ever biting a human, surviving on supermarket tomato juice like some kind of budget vampire. But now, she's made up her mind. She's going to bite Wakana and make her into a servant, because if anyone should be fawned over in this school, it's the Queen of the Night herself. Ruruna issues her first command with all the dramatic flair you'd expect from a self-proclaimed queen. In the name of Ruruna von Bettelheim, she orders Wakana to praise the great Ruruna-sama. She declares herself worthy of nothing but admiration, claiming there's not a single thing about her that doesn't deserve worship. The command is clear. Fawn over her, satisfy her desires, and make her feel like the royalty she believes she is. And Wakana? She delivers. With sparkling eyes and zero hesitation, she tells Ruruna that she's so cute. She gushes about Ruruna's pale skin, her pretty eyes, her gorgeous body, her beautiful long hair. The compliments pour out of her like she's been waiting her whole life for this moment. The praise is so enthusiastic, so intense, that it catches Ruruna completely off guard. Ruruna immediately regrets everything. She pushes Wakana away, face burning, stammering that something is very wrong here. She told Wakana to praise her, yes, but something about Wakana's voice has a suspicious ring to it. It's way too sincere, way too passionate, way too much. Ruruna stares down at the girl clinging to her and realizes that this servant thing might have been a catastrophic miscalculation. The real problem becomes clear fast. Ruruna learns that vampires reproduce by drinking blood. A perfectly noble, dignified process. Humans, on the other hand, do things differently, very differently. Ruruna's eyes widen as the implications hit her, and she stares at Wakana with a mixture of horror and fascination, slowly connecting the dots between human reproduction and why Wakana keeps acting the way she does. Ruruna is mortified. She sputters about how putting bodies together would lead to that kind of mood, her face contorted in scandalized disbelief while an R18 sign flashes behind her. Meanwhile, Wakana just stands there asking if she needs to carry something, completely unbothered. Ruruna can barely process how casually humans approach these things, and she's starting to wonder what exactly she's gotten herself into with this particular human. The biting negotiation goes sideways immediately. Ruruna tells Wakana it doesn't matter where on the body she bites. Anywhere with blood flowing is fine. Wakana's response is to calmly suggest her leg, noting it has thick blood vessels and the blood should be fresh and delicious. She says it with the same energy someone might use to recommend a restaurant, and Ruruna just stares, wondering how this girl can be so matter-of-fact about offering up her own body. Things escalate when Ruruna asks Wakana to offer some blood for a meal. Wakana's immediate response is to start removing her top. Ruruna nearly has a full breakdown. She screams that Wakana is shameless, that she only asked for blood, not a strip show. Wakana apologizes sweetly, explaining she assumed the bite would be on her neck, like in fiction. Ruruna, mortified, shouts that neck biting is just something humans made up, and that Wakana's behavior is beyond indecent. The indecent theme keeps escalating, and Ruruna is losing her mind. She realizes that if she were to bite Wakana's neck, it would basically be like an intimate embrace. Bodies pressed together, faces close, the whole thing dripping with implications she's not ready for. She declares Wakana's neck off limits, insisting she'll bite from the leg instead, trying desperately to maintain some shred of vampire dignity in this increasingly chaotic situation. Wakana agrees with an innocent, okay, completely unfazed by the whole ordeal. She looks at Ruruna with soft eyes, and there's a beat of silence between them that carries more weight than either of them expects. Ruruna, meanwhile, is internally monologuing about how maiden blood is supposed to be sweeter than any dessert and more full-bodied than any wine. A massive upgrade from her usual supermarket tomato juice. She's genuinely excited, practically giddy at the prospect. Ruruna tells Wakana to put out her hand, and Wakana obediently extends it with a quiet, "Here I go." The moment is oddly tender. Ruruna takes Wakana's hand, and what follows isn't the savage bite you'd expect from a centuries-old predator. Instead, Ruruna places a gentle kiss on the back of Wakana's hand, explaining that this is how vampires do etiquette. It's elegant, it's refined, and it's the most un-vampire-like thing she could possibly do. And then, Wakana does the unthinkable. She leans in close, whispering, "Master," and goes to kiss Ruruna right on the mouth. Ruruna shoves her away with the force of 400 years of outrage, screaming about how Wakana was about to kiss her, how she's being way too disrespectful for a servant. Wakana blinks innocently, saying she was told to fawn over her master, and she promptly forgot that personal boundaries were apparently still a thing. Ruruna can't believe what she's dealing with. She's furious, flustered, and completely overwhelmed by Wakana's total lack of shame. She forbids Wakana from mating, declaring that humans and their obsession with reproduction are disgusting. Wakana keeps repeating the word mating with genuine curiosity, which only makes Ruruna screech louder, calling her a mating-loving species, and insisting she'll personally teach this hopeless human some noble manners. But Wakana's face in that moment, that soft, gentle smile as she looks at the flustered vampire, says everything words can't. There's something real behind the obedience, something that goes beyond just following orders. Ruruna notices it too, the way Wakana's expression melts into something warm and unguarded. And for just a second, the 400-year-old queen of the night doesn't know what to do with herself. The servant is already getting under her skin. Ruruna tells herself she's disgusted, but her face tells a different story. After Wakana asks about the taste of her blood, Ruruna pauses, averts her gaze, and quietly admits it had an indecent flavor. She's blushing furiously, trying to process feelings she's never experienced in 4 centuries of existence, while Wakana just stands there looking hopeful and asking if the blood was to her liking. Ruruna's internal monologue spirals. What kind of woman has blood that tastes like that? Something shifts. Ruruna notices her heart is pounding, her body feels hot, and she's experiencing sensations she's never felt before in her long, long life. She touches her own face, realizing it's burning red, and Wakana watches with wide, concerned eyes, calling out, "Master?" The moment is quiet, intimate, and entirely unexpected. This was supposed to be about power and servitude, not about whatever is currently short-circuiting Ruruna's ancient vampire brain. The next day at school, Ruruna has made her move. She's used her vampire charm on the entire class, and now everyone is staring at her with hearts in their eyes, completely mesmerized. She laughs to herself. Not bad, realizing she should have used this power from the start. But Wakana, still loyal and still hopelessly adoring, rushes up calling her master in front of everyone, and Ruruna nearly loses it. She grabs Wakana, hissing that she can't be this obvious in public, because calling someone master at school is going to draw exactly the kind of attention a secret vampire does not need. Ruruna heads home after school feeling pretty pleased with herself, climbing the stairs of a worn-down apartment building where several monsters live together. She rents one of the rooms, and while she insists the place is beneath someone of her stature, it's all she's got. But now, with a rich human servant at her beck and call, her mind starts racing. If she plays this right, she could move into one of those fancy high-rise tower buildings, complete with an elevator. The fantasy spirals fast. Ruruna pictures Wakana greeting her at the door, bringing her blood on a silver platter, funding her entire lifestyle. She'll be able to do whatever she wants with just one human serving her, and she can't believe no other vampire has thought of this before. She smugly declares all other vampires to be good-for-nothings, completely confident that she alone has cracked the code to the perfect undead lifestyle. Then Wakana's voice calls out from behind her, "Rusama!" Back at her apartment, Ruruna's kin, an adorable little bat creature named Plum, flutters in with the daily Monster Network notice. This network keeps monsters informed about attacks and threats, and Ruruna brushes it off, saying she won't need to worry about any of that once she's ruling over the humans. But then Plum drops a bombshell. Carmilla-sama, a vampire Ruruna apparently knows, was caught by a human the other day. Ruruna's confident smirk vanishes instantly. The news hits like a freight train. Carmilla was caught by a vampire hunter for the crime of making more of her kind, biting a human, exactly what Ruruna just did. The punishment, 10,000 years of imprisonment. Ruruna's face goes white as she processes this, her earlier bravado crumbling into pure panic. She stammers out a terrified agreement that yes, biting humans is technically just vampire instinct, desperately trying to convince herself she's not in the same kind of danger. Ruruna can barely hold it together. She's the great queen of the night who rules over all humans. Or at least, she was supposed to be. But apparently if word gets out that she's controlling a human, she'll face an extremely harsh punishment from the vampire authorities. She insists she's not scared, not even in the slightest, but her trembling hands and sweating face tell a completely different story. She makes a decision right then and there. She and Wakana need to keep their distance at school. Wakana does not take this well. When Ruruna tells her they need to stay apart at school, Wakana's immediate leap is that she's being cast aside entirely. She starts shaking, tears welling up in her eyes, and begs her master, if she intends to throw her away, then please just suck up all of her blood right now and end it. Ruruna recoils in horror, screaming that this is way too heavy, and that she never said anything about casting anyone aside. The situation keeps spiraling as Ruruna tries to explain herself. She admits she's technically the one who bit Wakana and made her into her kin, and that biting humans is a natural thing for vampires, so she's not at fault. But Wakana fixates on the keep our distance part, protesting that they're supposed to be classmates with no common ground. Ruruna fires back that this is how it's always been between them, but even she seems to realize how weak that argument sounds coming from someone who literally enslaved this girl. Wakana looks up at Ruruna with those trembling, tear-filled eyes and says quietly that if she's incompetent in any way, she'll fix it. The words land like a punch to the gut, and Ruruna freaks out, yelling that Wakana is making it sound like everything is her fault, but the damage is done. Wakana's earnest, desperate desire to be useful has Ruruna completely cornered, and the vampire who was supposed to be the one in control is now scrambling to manage a situation that's gotten way beyond her ability to handle. Ruruna tries a different approach. She explains to Wakana that if people found out she bit her, it wouldn't be a huge deal for Wakana, but it would still be troublesome for both of them. Wakana processes this slowly and repeats back, so as long as nobody finds out, it's okay? Ruruna confirms, then immediately catches herself wondering why she's explaining all this to a mere kin. She insists it's really no big deal, but there's something in her voice that suggests she's starting to treat Wakana less like a servant and more like someone whose feelings actually matter to her. The reality of Ruruna's situation becomes painfully clear when she sits down to think things through. She's never had a friend in 400 years of living, let alone someone who's absolutely loyal to her. What happens to a human after being turned into a vampire's kin varies from person to person, but one thing stays the same: their absolute loyalty to their master. The weight of that responsibility hits Ruruna hard, because if she forces a one-sided command on Wakana and the girl breaks from the shock of betrayal, the consequences could be devastating. Ruruna wrestles with herself as the guilt creeps in. She wonders if she picked the wrong human to bite, if maybe she shouldn't have chosen someone who stands out so much. But she quickly rationalizes, kin are a symbol of their master's status, so she should bite those worthy of her. She hasn't done anything wrong. Still, the police could show up at her door, and she can't shake the feeling that this whole plan is unraveling faster than she can stitch it back together. Wakana questions whether Ruruna can even handle her as a kin, asking if all kin are like her. Ruruna snaps back that she can't drink 3 kilos of blood in the first place, and she's never made a kin before, so she has no idea what's normal. She just wants Wakana to keep their relationship secret at school. That's all. But Wakana immediately misinterprets this as rejection, and the cycle of dramatic misunderstanding starts all over again, with Ruruna screaming about secrecy and Wakana hearing abandonment. Despite all the chaos, something unexpected is happening. Ruruna admits to herself that dealing with Wakana is exhausting, but at least the girl has become more positive. She questions whether she can ever win against Wakana's overwhelming devotion, wondering if kin are truly supposed to be this completely obedient to their masters. Then she turns to Wakana with a serious expression and calls her name. The moment hangs in the air. It's the first time Ruruna has addressed her without yelling. Ruruna tells Wakana something she's never told anyone, that she's come to know about Wakana's love. Wakana immediately panics, begging her not to say such embarrassing things, while Ruruna sputters and asks what she even means by love. The word catches the vampire completely off guard, and for a moment neither of them knows what to do with the emotion hanging between them. It's clumsy and awkward, and neither of them is equipped to deal with it, but something real is forming underneath all the master-servant pretense. Ruruna finds herself confronted with something unexpected. Wakana's feelings aren't just loyalty or obedience, they run deeper than any command could produce. She tries to brush it off as just a vampire-kin bond, insisting she didn't say anything about love and getting flustered at the very suggestion. But Wakana's sincerity keeps breaking through Ruruna's defenses, and the 400-year-old vampire who's never had a single friend is slowly realizing that she might be in way over her head with this particular human. Meanwhile, a flashback reveals a younger Wakana, a little girl sitting by a Christmas tree, hugging a large stuffed bear while her mother tells her to thank Santa. Little Wakana looks up with wide, innocent eyes, clutching her gift, and whispers, "Yeah," with a soft, wistful expression. It's a quiet, tender memory that shows a completely different side of the girl who's been throwing herself at Ruruna with reckless devotion, hinting at a loneliness that existed long before any vampire bite. The flashback continues as we see a phone screen showing a goth lowly dress doll that young Wakana wanted. Her mother cheerfully tells her that if she asks Santa, he'll get her one, and little Wakana agrees with a hesitant, "Yeah." There's something bittersweet about the memory. A girl who's always been given everything she wanted materially, but who seems to be searching for something no amount of gifts could provide. The connection to her current obsession with Ruruna starts to make a painful kind of sense. Back in the present, Wakana wakes up confused in an empty classroom after school. She blinks, disoriented, trying to figure out where she is. As her memories start flooding back, she recalls Ruruna deciding to give her an order. Her eyes widen with recognition and she whispers, "Aihara-san," except she's calling herself by her own surname, as if she's remembering who she was before she became someone's kin. Something is shifting inside her, a flicker of her old self surfacing through the fog of vampire loyalty. The two of them walk through the school hallway together, and the other students can't help but stare. Classmates whisper in confusion, "Since when did those two become so close? Are they doing some kind of role play?" Wakana clings to Ruruna's arm with hearts practically floating off her. While Ruruna tries to maintain her composure, she praises Wakana with a simple, "Well done," and a cool smile, the closest thing to genuine warmth she's shown in 4 centuries of existence. Then, Ruruna leans in close, her expression shifting into something dangerously intimate, and whispers that as a reward, she'll suck Wakana's blood later. Wakana's eyes go wide, her cheeks flush, and the surrounding students watch in bewildered fascination. Ruruna laughs internally. Those ignorant plebeians are envious of her, and it's no use being jealous. All they can do is worship or fear the majesty that is Ruruna von Bettelheim. But as she squeezes Wakana's hand a little tighter, it's clear that the girl she bid as a servant is becoming something far more complicated than she ever planned for. Ruruna is panicking. The news about Carmilla's 10,000-year imprisonment is still ringing in her ears, and she knows that if anyone finds out she made a human into her kin, the same fate awaits her. She gave Wakana explicit instructions to behave herself for a while, told herself she just needs to lay low and not stand out, convinced herself this whole thing will blow over. Then a voice cuts through the hallway. "Hey, what did you do to Waka?" And Ruruna nearly jumps out of her skin. The voice belongs to a girl Ruruna doesn't recognize, and the 400-year-old vampire is immediately terrified. She pieces together that Waka means Aihara Wakana and starts spiraling. All Wakana did was call her master in the classroom and get a little clingy, so what's this sudden confrontation about? Ruruna's eyes go wide with genuine fear as she realizes this girl is scary, not in a supernatural way, but in the way that only a protective friend who knows something is wrong can be. Ruruna bolts, screaming that she's not running away, she just doesn't want to cause a commotion. Ruruna ends up collapsed in the nurse's office, completely drained from the stress. Wakana finds her there and murmurs, "How pitiful, my master," while gazing at her crumpled form with genuine tenderness. She adds that a weak master is lovely too, and Ruruna, face down on the bed, dignity in shambles, can only grumble that this is disrespectful. The great queen of the night has been reduced to hiding from a high school girl, and her servant thinks it's adorable. Wakana has a solution, and it's absolutely unhinged. She cheerfully suggests that if Ruruna doesn't like standing out, she should simply bite every single student in the school, turning them all into her kin. That way, nobody would look at her strangely anymore. Ruruna stares at her in disbelief, barely able to process the casual megalomania coming out of this girl's mouth. She sputters, "What on earth are you saying?" while Wakana holds her hand with sparkling eyes, genuinely proud of her own brilliant plan. But Wakana isn't done. She offers up her childhood friend next, suggesting that Ruruna should just bite Yura-chan and make her their ally. Ruruna is horrified. She just offered up her own friend like it was nothing. Wakana explains calmly that she's sure Yura-chan would be happier if she were bitten too, and then shifts to something more vulnerable. She says she's been thinking, and that being made into Ruruna's kin has saved her heart. The confession catches Ruruna completely off guard. Wakana introduces the mystery girl. Her name is Goto Yura, a second year in the neighboring class and Wakana's childhood friend. Ruruna's internal monologue is priceless. If Wakana is a swan, then this woman would be more like a cassowary. She orders Wakana to tell her everything about Yura, and learns that the girl's parents are doctors. She's very smart, and she gives off a rich vibe. Ruruna demands more information with the intensity of a general preparing for war. Wakana describes how Yura used to be spoiled and a crybaby when they were little, but she's matured a lot recently. The problem is, they haven't talked much since entering high school, and Wakana's been feeling lonely about it. Ruruna listens with growing dread, her instincts screaming that Wakana's childhood friend is going to be a problem. The fact that Yura's parents are doctors means she's also from a wealthy family, which only makes Ruruna more nervous. This is someone who's socially protected and impossible to deal with quietly. Ruruna realizes the situation is more complicated than she thought. Yura is someone protected by society, the daughter of doctors, well-connected, the kind of person whose sudden behavioral change would absolutely be noticed. If Ruruna were to carelessly bite her, someone would definitely figure out something was wrong. Wakana, unfazed by this logic, cheerfully insists they should just bite Yura and make her their ally, complete with a heart symbol. Ruruna stares at her kin and wonders, not for the first time, if Wakana's devotion has completely overridden her common sense. Meanwhile, Wakana is experiencing her own quiet revolution. She reflects on her past, how all her life she basked in her parents' love like a little bird, never giving anything back in return. She believed that having proper manners and living with elegance in her heart would be enough to repay the people who cared for her. But something was always missing, a hollow feeling she couldn't name, a sense that being passively loved wasn't the same as truly connecting with someone. Wakana's hands trace along Ruruna's features in her mind. The pale skin, the pretty eyes, the gorgeous body, the long, beautiful hair. Each detail burns itself into her memory with an intensity that goes far beyond obedience or a vampire's command. She's not just following orders anymore. She's falling, and she knows it, and the knowledge doesn't scare her. It fills her with purpose she's never felt before in her entire pampered, sheltered life. And then the truth drops. Wakana declares that she'll cast aside her past self, the version of her that was resigned to simply being loved without doing anything in return. With her own heart, by her own volition, she'll do everything in her power for Ruruna, support her, and deepen her love for her. This isn't the vampire bond talking anymore. This is Wakana choosing, freely and deliberately, to love someone who didn't ask for it, and definitely doesn't know how to handle it. She doesn't need anything else, she says, as long as she can be by Ruruna-sama's side. 10:59 p.m. Claude responded. Ruruna tries to talk sense into Wakana about her insane plan to bite everyone in the school. Ruruna tries to talk sense into Wakana about her insane plan to bite everyone in the school. She reminds her that Carmilla got 10,000 years of imprisonment just for making a single human her kin. If Ruruna goes on a biting spree, she'll definitely be turned to ash. But Wakana just tilts her head with an innocent smile, completely unbothered, and asks, "How about it, my master?" as if she's suggesting what to have for lunch. Ruruna can barely contain herself, telling Wakana she's a long way from understanding her. The nightmare scenario plays out in Ruruna's head in vivid detail. If she turns Wakana into a full vampire, Wakana would start biting people too, declaring everything is for Ruruna-sama's world conquest. Like a rolling snowball, the number of vampires would grow bigger and bigger until it became all-out war between Ruruna and the entire human race. Making someone your kin is already a serious enough crime. She doesn't even want to think about the punishment for creating an army. The fantasy alone makes her break into a cold sweat. Then Wakana drops the biggest bomb yet. She looks at Ruruna with earnest, shining eyes and asks, "Would you turn me into a vampire too?" That way, she says softly, she can be at Ruruna's side for all eternity. The request is so raw, so sincere, that Ruruna is struck completely silent. This isn't a servant asking for a promotion. This is a girl asking to give up her humanity, her lifespan, everything, just to never be separated from the person she loves. Ruruna stares at her, speechless. Ruruna composes herself and shifts into a surprisingly gentle mode. She tells Wakana she's done well and that she deserves a reward, then asks her to name her desire. Wakana goes quiet, completely, unusually quiet. She fidgets, hesitates, and the normally shameless girl who tried to kiss her master and offered up her own body without hesitation can't seem to find the words. Ruruna watches her squirm, genuinely curious about what could possibly make this girl shy after everything they've been through together. Wakana finally answers. She bows her head and simply says yes when Ruruna asks if she's ready. What follows is a scene that catches Ruruna entirely off guard. Wakana has been working behind the scenes with Yura to prepare something special. They've claimed an empty classroom as Ruruna's territory and placed an elaborate decorated chair at the center of it. Ruruna stammers in disbelief. A throne? For her? The desire to rule that all vampires are born with surges through her body, and she can barely contain how good it feels to sit in it. The throne is magnificent, cushioned, adorned with roses, crafted with obvious care. Ruruna tries to play it cool, insisting she's only sitting on it because they prepared it for her, not because she wants to. But her face betrays pure joy as she sinks into the seat, feeling comfort wrap around her entire body. She calls for both Wakana and Yura and declares her decision. They will claim this empty classroom as her first territory, and from here, this floor, then this school, and then the entire world will fall under her rule. But there's a problem that needs solving first, and her name is Goto Yura. After Wakana mentioned her childhood friend, Ruruna realizes she needs to deal with this threat directly. She announces to Wakana that she'll feast on Yura's blood too, and in the name of Ruruna von Bettelheim, she commands Yura to offer her blood. It's the same theatric declaration she used on Wakana, delivered with all the confidence of a vampire queen who's definitely not terrified of a high school girl. The biting goes very differently this time. Yura doesn't melt into devoted obedience like Wakana did. Instead, she immediately starts screaming and struggling. Her body feels hot, she can't move, and she's absolutely furious. She demands to know what Ruruna did to Waka, calls her a crazy chick who needs to be reported to the police, and insists she should be carried away at once. Ruruna panics. This isn't like it was with Wakana at all, and she realizes that every kin really does react differently to being turned. Ruruna scrambles to explain herself, but Yura isn't buying any of it. When Ruruna finally blurts out that she's a vampire, unable to handle being called a pervert anymore, Yura's response is devastating. She dismisses the vampire claim entirely, sarcastically noting that the impact of a perverted hypnotist who sucks the blood of women was so powerful that Ruruna would obviously make up something like that. Meanwhile, Wakana helpfully chimes in that her master bites girls and sucks their blood simply because she likes it, which makes everything approximately 1,000 times worse. Ruruna tries her hypnotic command approach, and thankfully, Yura's body responds to the orders, even though her mind is fighting every second of it. She can't move, and she's horrified by this fact. Ruruna realizes she doesn't really want to call herself a hypnotist, but the cover story seems to be working well enough. Yura points out that she's never heard of a hypnotist who bites their target as a trigger, and even Wakana admits she has a point. Ruruna watches Wakana smile confidently, and wonders with growing dread what her servant is planning now. Wakana steps forward with a cool, composed expression and tells Yura she'll explain everything about her master's identity. Ruruna freezes. Is Wakana about to reveal that she's a vampire to an outsider? But Wakana delivers the information smoothly, then turns to Yura and gives her the orders. Do not cause Ruruna harm, and do not speak of her to outsiders. Ruruna is stunned. She didn't foresee such a cool scene presenting itself, and she's secretly delighted that her servant handled the situation like a seasoned diplomat. But Yura is not going quietly. She immediately charges at Ruruna the moment the command loosens, screaming about what Ruruna did to Waka and demanding answers. Ruruna barely dodges, stammering commands for Yura to stay back, and the order barely takes hold in time. Yura's body freezes mid-lunge, but her mouth keeps going. She swears she'll find out what Ruruna did to her friend and make her pay. Ruruna realizes with dawning horror that this new kin is nothing like the sweet, obedient Wakana. Wakana, of course, reads the entire situation completely wrong. She beams at Ruruna and declares that her master bit Yura-chan so that Wakana wouldn't be lonely, because she truly is kind. Ruruna groans internally, knowing full well she only bit Yura because the girl had her literally backed against a wall, and it was a do-or-die situation. She hadn't planned to make any more kin, but now she's stuck with a furious second servant who thinks she's a perverted criminal, and a first servant who thinks the whole thing was an act of love. Yura is still seething, accusing Raruna of making Waka go crazy and swearing she'll get to the bottom of whatever this is. Raruna can only mumble that she didn't really do anything, while Wakana stands beside her calling her my master with complete adoration. The contrast between the two kin couldn't be more stark. One drowning in love, the other drowning in rage, and Raruna is trapped between them, realizing that her vampire life just got exponentially more complicated. Raruna decides to own the chaos. She declares loudly that she only sucks the blood of those worthy of being sucked by her. It has to be a pretty girl. She doesn't go around biting just anyone. Wakana melts at the implication, swooning over being called a peerless pretty girl, while Raruna rolls her eyes at how gullible her servant is. But underneath the bravado, there's a flash of something real. Raruna is choosing her people, building something that looks less like a vampire army and more like a dysfunctional little family. Then Raruna